what's your thought on this case, this Missouri v. Biden case, continuing to move up, and really it's fascinating to see how many judges, like you said, have agreed that this seems to violate the First Amendment. But where are all the journalists? I mean, you're the only person who's reached out to me. As I'm trying to rack my memory, but I think you're the only journalist who has reached out to say, like, hey, were you really, like, does this really happen? Like, your video was taken down by YouTube with Cariotti, like, you lost your day job. Like, I was an Emmy Award winning journalist. Like, I was totally one of them. I was in the world, and then I left, and this all happened, and it's like we never knew Allison. She's just like our crazy redheaded stepsister we just like to forget about.
Right. Well, look, your story is important for, I think, several reasons, right? You had a state job, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Yep. The interview that you did was with a doctor who didn't say anything that was factually incorrect. He didn't offer any misinformation. In retrospect, all he was doing was expressing a credentialed, informed policy disagreement. And here we have essentially, in your case, a State Department punishing you for expressing your right, your First Amendment rights, both as a person and as a journalist, and indirectly, Dr. Cariotti, who ends up becoming a plaintiff in this case. If I were I am a journalist covering this story. This is absolutely crucial background to understanding the genesis of this Supreme Court, well, what's now a Supreme Court case. And for nobody to have called you, that tells you a little bit about how journalists are looking at this thing. Like, they don't even want to know what the details are. They've already gotten their marching papers on what they think. So I guess it's not important.
Yeah, and just big picture, like RTDNA, the Murrows, gosh, what's the Society of Professional Journalists? What's the one that's in the Poynter Institute? I don't see any of these journalism organizations like following this case very closely. Not necessarily to even advocate for it, but just to understand what's going on here. Do you think it would be different if it had something that aligned more with the sort of neoliberal way of looking at the world? I mean, I'm just trying to think, like, if it had something to do with racism or women's rights or something. I mean, do you think then they would care if Trump was in office?
Maybe, but see, one of the things that we found in the Twitter files was that a lot of the civil society organizations that we once relied on to advocate for journalists' rights have kind of been swallowed up by this new mission, which is really about "quote unquote" anti-disinformation. So the Poynter Institute is a major sponsor of fact-checking and anti-disinformation type activities. So they're sort of on that side of the line. They're not likely to look upon this case as something, where they feel like they need to advocate for the rights of people to, have free speech, or for journalists to speak up. There are a few organizations that I've seen that don't seem to be part of that whole mechanism, right? Like the Committee to Protect Journalists is one. But the traditional organizations that you would expect to be there in this situation, like, for instance, I was an intern at the Village Voice in the 80s, so I had a desk next to Nat Hentoff, who was like the big free speech reporter for decades in America, and every article that he wrote was swallowed up by every one of these organizations. Like, they were all his sources. There just aren't a whole lot of those organizations left now. There's sort of FIRE, which does some of this work, but mostly, no, they're not going to be on the side of the free speech advocates anymore.
Okay, I am looking up an article that I gotta get back on screen here, show you in a second, Matt, because it was written by somebody at The Guardian, I think, that is a repeat. Why am I not back on screen? Here we go. It was a repeat of an article I remember reading in 2016 by the New York Times. The headline was something like, "Trump is challenging our norms of objectivity." Mm-hmm. Okay. And that did seem like that was like for me anyway, and I was still in television news at the time, that was a distinctive shift. This idea that we have an existential threat. And so as journalists, we have to do journalism differently. I mean, we can't like show both sides or whatever. We have to advocate for something. And then this new idea too, that democracy is under attack or is like going the way of the white buffalo, which is funny because I would say that I might agree with them on that, but for totally different reasons. You know what I mean? Like I actually do believe like the Constitution is under attack and everything, but not because of like January 6th, you know? So I'm like that I see it very differently. Anyway, let me tell people about some wine real fast. This is Extremist Altitude wine. This is uncensored wine. Actually, it's unfiltered, but it's kind of the same thing. It's from very remote regions of Argentina. You cannot buy it at the grocery store. Small family farms. One of the vineyards is over 200 years old. It's the oldest vineyard in Argentina. One is the third highest vineyard in the world. And it is a great way to support my work. Bonner Wine has been with me since the beginning, since the Cariotti video. Everybody since Cariotti's had to listen to me promote the wine. They probably want to drink after listening to this because they're just over the wine promos, but that's okay because you can go to Allison Wine Promo. And remember, when you're reading through Supreme Court cases, it's very important to have something good to drink. And it'll probably be more interesting if you have a couple glasses of Allison Wine Promo. You get 50% off the wine and 50% off shipping, and it is a great way to support my work. It also makes for a great gift. We've got to have some kind of holiday coming up. Halloween. Get it for Halloween. All right. And then if you want to mix that with something very healthy for you, you can put a little bit of this Field of Greens superfood powder I've got right here. It's organic superfood powder. They take the whole fruit and vegetable, flash freeze it, and grind it up. And 2 scoops of this right here, 2 scoops of this in some water. I shake it up. I got my fruits and vegetables for the day. They're physician formulated for specific immune function, and they actually taste pretty good. So if your garden is being attacked by rampant Florida predators like mine is, or you just don't know how to grow any food, which is also my problem, or you're going into winter, which doesn't ever happen really here in Florida, but that we have other problems. You can go to fieldofgreens.com and enter promo code Allison. You get 15% off your first order. They got a bunch of stuff. They even have snack bars made with honey instead of sugar, which I also really like. So fieldofgreens.com and promo code Allison1L, 15% off your first order.